Gotcha. So obviously we can't talk about the state of game journalism without touching a little bit on Gamergate. Rather than sort of rehashing the whole debate and going back into what happened, what didn't happen.
No, let's rehash.
All right, let's brawl.
The next
Let's
2
brawl.
hours.
You guys will got all night, right?
Yeah, right. Gonna be here for a few hours. Rather than rehash everything, let's just talk a little bit about, what all of you see as the lessons that should be learned from the experience on all ends.
I think that a very important lesson is that, free of Gamergate, I always want to call it Gamersgate and everybody mocks me, is that, first off, journalists and print publications should never feel their audience in the sense of ethics and ethical concerns. I'm not saying that's what Gamergate was about or its main thrust, but in my mind, if someone raises issues of ethics, no matter the reason, they should be looked into. And I don't think, because it may be tied to something that's inexcusable, like the harassment of women, it doesn't mean you should completely ignore the fact that maybe there are legitimate concerns being raised in terms of ethics. And I think it's always a good idea to look at the ethics of game journalism or journalism. I talk about this a lot on Twitter, ironically. But I think that game sites should follow the SBJ, which is the Society of Professional Journalists Ethics, or at least start from there. And I think that they should, there should be an internal ongoing conversation about ethics and how ethics are treated, because it's incredibly important. There is a trust given to journalists, no matter what topic you're covering, that you're going to do things right by the reader in terms of certain rules, being honest and not being paid to write content, stuff like that. Not being paid by the people you're covering to write content. So I think that was the big thing for me. I think it was an important reminder to some, and maybe an eye-opener to others, that ethics are very important and should always be looked at.
For me, the lesson that this summer taught me was how quickly and definitively misinformation and the influence of bad actors can paint the public perception of a movement like Gamergate. One of the most persistent refrains you heard from people who are identified as so-called Gamergaters was, well, we're not harassing people. Only a small segment of people are harassing people. Well, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that was the case, then you guys need to sell police and get those guys in line. I don't necessarily believe that, but the idea that a meme can solidify around a movement like that so quickly was very telling. Like, within days, it was about quote-unquote ethics in games journalism. And that's what was the rallying cry, but the reality of the actions that you were seeing were involved in anything but. And that was the thing that was most striking to me. On a personal note, it was really, I'll just say frustrating how Gamergate kind of coincided with the activism around Michael Brown's death in Ferguson, because to me it was this weird kind of reflection of how like discourse happens at this moment in time, especially on the internet. Like, you have people who made up their minds about the issue, and what they want to do is they want to rally up with people who are of the same mind, and go into battle with people who have the opposing viewpoint. What's missing from that is an actual exchange of ideas, right? Is an actual discourse or open-mindedness that might let somebody make up their own mind. The freedom to be undecided was not present. So it was really weird to see that happening in something like highly charged, political, racial, tragic death of a young man, and then something else that has to do with the entertainment medium, and those things are really far apart from each other, right? Like in reality. But the way people were talking about them was eerily similar. And that was, to me, that was like, okay, is this how we talk now? And that was a really bracing thing to kind of witness.
I mean, one of the most important lessons was for, the journalists who are embedded in this community to kind of remain voices of rational, thought and not get, just not get tied to one viewpoint or another, because as so much mainstream media then focused their eyes on what Gamergate was happening, it was easy for them to paint with a broad brush and say, well, this is all a big gamer problem. And instead, we really, it's a minority, it's a small amount of gamers. And I think it was very important for us to kind of keep, this is a symptomatic problem that Gamergate didn't have the name Gamergate, but these people have had these views about, harassment and ethics and journalism for a while. So we needed to kind of say, okay, let's unpack the history and be kind of good diplomats of it.
Personal attacks are not
Yeah.
political discourse. That's the thing. That's, you can't equate one with the other, as far as I'm concerned. Personal attacks have been made in the name of political movements, but it's almost always been ill-advised. And if you want something to change systemically, you act systemically and not as individuals who you perceive as being oriented in a different way.
Yeah, we actually don't use the term gamer on the site at all. It's not like a public stated policy, but long before Gamergate, that was just a decision that we made. We just felt like it was imprecise and, now has baggage, I guess. So, yay us, I guess. I think for me, it was interesting to watch and very sad. One thing is, there are two things I probably learned. The first is that not all gamers are trolls, but all trolls are definitely gamers. And so, clearly the worst people on the internet are very invested in video games, and that is unfortunate. I think the other thing is that I felt like for the first time, I'm not gonna say, Gamergate clearly not a good thing for the women who got death threats or whatever. But at the same time, I think what was nice is that you were able to identify, at least even from the mainstream coverage, you were able to identify that there was a group of people. There was, basically, I think if you're someone, first of all, I think most people in the world probably have already forgotten about Gamergate, just frankly speaking. There are other things to be concerned about in the world. I feel like it kind of reached a fever pitch, and unless something else really terrible happens, I think people have pretty much had their fill. The extent to which it affected you, I think, has everything to do with what your preconceived notion of what a gamer already was. And so that's why I think, this sort of narrative took flight, was because if the predominant sort of prevailing perception of gamers is that they're awful, terrible people, then it's much easier to believe that Gamergate is, much easier to believe that Gamergate is a sign of something or other. But if you're someone who's in the world of games, it's like, oh yeah, that is like a crazy minority of people. That's just I know from the people around me, you understand how Twitter works. So in some ways I feel like, I don't think it was obviously not a necessary thing. I think it's unfortunate that games became this crazy litmus test on the internet for terrible people, but I think it makes it a lot easier now to sort of say okay, now we have a name for this group of people who have been among us for all this time. We can give them pins and then just kind of put them wherever, just over in that queue and Twitter or whatever. So just anything #Gamergate, you can just kind of all right, that part of the internet exists now. It has a name.
Yeah, and thank you guys, all of you, for your thoughts on it. I know it's a really challenging topic to sort of talk about. I want to switch gears a little bit. Jamin mentioned earlier that one thing that really gets his attention is narrative in a game, and and that's one specific way in which a game can really stand out from the pack. What are some other things that you could give some of our developers here in the crowd and on Twitter that you think are some good, selling points to their games, pitch-wise, that would really get you to, pay attention to them?
for me, it's whether a game makes me look at myself, you know, my own kind of like messy psychological tendencies, and or the world. It makes me examine one of those things, right? Like some of my favorite games from the last couple of years, it was like Papa and Yo, like, you know, that had a story, that had a clear emotional kind of directive that it was speaking to, and it executed on that. Like this year, like Never Alone was like, Never Alone is mechanically not, you know, like this great quantum leap of game making. It's a pretty standard like physics-based platformer, but like what it does is it gathers up the voice of a community and their traditions, puts it in the video game, and has enough presentational flair where like, okay, I think I know something about these people now and how they survive, and the kind of stories that have kept them alive. Like that's not something I've gotten from a video game before. So that makes me supremely interested. Like another favorite game of mine this year, This War of Mine. It's great because, you know, it takes the camera that is usually focused on a soldier with a gun and moves it over to the fringe, to the people like in the crumbled buildings where he's running past. And that's all it needs to do. And again, they have some mechanical stuff that you've seen in other games before, resource building games, strategy games. But they focus on human beings that, in terms of degrees of separation, are a lot closer to the people in this room than we will ever be to a soldier. You know, veterans excluded. Thank you for your service. Those are the things, like you have a point of view on the world that is more than iterating on a game you liked when you were 10 years old. That is more than just, you know, a bunch of checkboxes. And those games can be great too, you know? Like I love like fun, mindless escapes that are like brilliantly polished. I love Bayonetta 2, you know, and that game is not telling me anything about the world. Actually, that's not true. It probably is, but I have to dig a little bit deeper for that, and not intentionally so, I should say. So those are the kind of things for me that like, hey, this is what I'm interested in.
I like to write about games that make me think, and that subvert the things like narrative, and make use of games in surprising ways. I think we could all probably say that we like games that are fun, so that sort of goes without saying. But I love, the stories I like writing most are stories that are more about how gaming is being used in surprising ways, or like I said, things that, you know, play with your ideas of what storytelling is, because I'm a big narrative fan.
I mean, I definitely agree with what both these guys said, but I think what is most important for especially a small developer reaching out is you need to tell the person you're talking to, so me or anyone else, we all have inboxes that are just a total shit show, and we need to know, you know, why is your game different? In like the most succinct and interesting way possible. Tell me what I want to know of, like, what is this game? Why is it something that I haven't seen before? And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have like a set thing for coverage at Kill Screen. It's kind of like, you sort of just, for us, it's like we have, I mean, one of the strongest things is aesthetics, like how a game looks. And I don't mean like it has like polish or whatever, like we have a particular sort of tone visually, and you know, some of this is a little bit selfish, like my site looks a lot better when it has amazing things to look at on it. So if your game doesn't look good, that can certainly be a deterrent. We tend not to stray too heavy into like systems-based games, just because, you know, again, it's like I think there's an opportunity for everyone to kind of carve out specific niches for themselves, so people when they go to Kill Screen have a good idea of what it is that they're getting. I mean, again, to Chelsea's point, when we get so much stuff, so like jargon, just like cut that out. If it says like JRPG, fantasy, well, even if that's actually what it is, like those are words that you are using that you're wasting words in the subject line that could be used for something that's really interesting.